Blood Witch, A Tale of the Assassin Without a Name by Scott Marlowe. "Good evening, Inspector," I said, dropping into the alleyway behind Inspector Wright. As expected, my entrance spooked the handful of cobblestompers loitering about. Hands shot to weapons, but the inspector, who crouched over a corpse of all things, waved them off. "It's all right," he said, standing. "He's here at my request." "Nasty night to be out and about, isn't it?" I asked him. Cold raindrops fell on the cobbles, and a wind whipped up in time with my words, scattering debris up and down the alley. Inspector Wright tipped his hat back, letting water fall from the wide brim. "It's a nastier night to find yourself murdered." I took one look at the body and realized I knew him. Even though he was face down, there was no mistaking the jacket. Patched and stained, its original burgundy color may have faded long ago, yet no more regal garment had ever adorned a lord of the streets. The coat was old and worn, but like its wearer, full of the kind of charm and character that only came along once in a great while. "You knew him?" Inspector Wright asked. My expression and prolonged look must have given me away, so no point in denying it. "His name was Malakai." I paused. "He was a friend of sorts. He sells information. Used to sell information. I knew I was talking slowly, but I'd known Malakai for a long time, and he was the last person I'd ever expected to find face down and dead this night or any other." "Murdered, you said?" "It wasn't me, if that's why you called me here." "It's not," he said. "This isn't your style." "Oh? How's that?" The inspector rolled the body over. "Notice anything odd?" Malakai's death mask was all open eyes and mouth, his tongue shriveled, and his skin pale as ash and wet from the soft patter of rain. The corpse color was natural enough, but the sunken cheeks and spidery black lines creeping up from his collar across his face were not. "What did this?" I asked, shaking off a chill because there was something unnatural about the way Malakai had died. I saw no obvious wounds, no bloodstains, no signs he'd tussled with someone in a life-or-death struggle. The open mouth and wide eyes suggested strangulation, but I saw no pressure marks or signs of garroting on his neck. I'd say heart attack or stroke, but not after seeing his face and shrunken tongue. "No idea," Inspector Wright said. "The only thing I know for sure is that something or someone emptied this corpse of all its blood. Look here." The inspector peeled back Malakai's jacket and shirt sleeve and inserted the tip of a small knife into his wrist. Nothing came out. "I've never seen the like. Have you?" I inspected Malakai's arm. "Can't say that I have." A couple of cobble-stompers wheeled in a hand-cart, so we backed away from the corpse to let them do their job. "Why did you ask me here, Inspector?" I received the message from a mutual associate of ours. The note had said it was urgent, so I'd come dressed for work in dark leather and bristling with my usual weapons. Also, I wore my mask. The inspector knew my face, but the others did not. For their sakes and mine, it was better they never saw it. "I asked you here because this isn't the first corpse to turn up like this," Wright said. "Oh? How many others? And how long ago?" "2 others. The first about a week ago. The second, a few nights. So far, the only connection is that all 3 victims lived on the street. That, and they all died in the Shambles. The first was a harlot, the second a beggar, and now this one. All easy prey, I thought." Behind us, the 2 patrolmen had Malakai's corpse wrapped in linen and carefully placed it in the back of the cart. Wright removed his spectacles and rubbed at his eyes. "Is there anyone in the city capable of this?" I waited until they'd wheeled by us. At a gesture from the inspector, the other cobble-stompers left the alley with them. Once they had, I lowered my mask. "Capable? Yes," I said. "But with motive?" "No. Malakai had no enemies, and even if he did, they wouldn't have killed him like this." Wright let out a breath. "I thought so. I'm afraid I'm stumped for the moment. The nature of the crime suggests some sort of diablerie, but I'll be damned if I know what kind. Word is that there's a witch here in the Shambles. Could she be responsible?" "Mathilda. Not her style, given what I knew about her." I said as much to the inspector and added, "She's an odd one, all right. But she's not a murderer. Besides, her methods are a bit more explosive. Wright narrowed his brow at that, and realizing I may have said too much, I asked, "Anyone find a dog?" "A dog?" "Yes, goes by the name Bombadillo. He and Malakai were close." Wright shook his head. "No one saw a dog." What was that about explosions? Ignoring the inspector, I walked down the alley and called out, "Bombadillo!" He must be around here somewhere. "Bombadillo! Here, boy." Bombadillo wasn't big unless you counted his heart, but there were only so many places to hide, and the dog wouldn't have gone far from his master. I called out again. Still nothing, so I kept moving down the alley, lifting bits of trash and looking around crates stacked behind the back of a grocer. I was about to give up when I heard his familiar snuffling from inside an open doorway. The building was unoccupied, the door long since removed, and I found him inside, huddled in a corner, shaking, but not because he was soaked through. Something had damn near scared the life out of him. "Hey, boy, it's me." He wasn't just trembling. He sat pressed into the corner, his head hanging and face turned away. I inched closer, removing my glove and holding my hand out to him. That got his attention, but he only pressed harder against the wall and still refused to look at me. So I sat beside him, held my hand out, and waited. After some more urging, he finally looked at me, his one eye a bottomless pool staring back. His short tail wagged, and he quickly sniffed my hand. He didn't bite my finger off, which I took as a good sign, so I gently ran my hand across his back. Mindful of his burn scars, I didn't press too hard. Just wanted to let him know he had nothing to fear. That seemed to have the intended effect. He shuffled forward, sneezed, and rolled to his back. "That's a good boy, Bombadillo," I whispered, feeling his continued trembling through my hand. Behind me, Inspector Wright said, "Never figured you for a dog person." "I'm not. But Bombadillo is special. He's a survivor, and a terrified one at that." I got him on all fours and slipped a hand underneath to lift him. Cradling him to my chest, we returned to the alley. "This inspector is your sole witness to the crime." Wright guffawed. "Too bad he can't answer my questions." "Right," I said, pressing the dog into the inspector so he had no choice but to take him. "But I know someone I think can." Like I said, Malakai was a friend, so I want to catch who did this as much as you do. So I'll make you a deal. You watch after Bombadillo, and I'll go see this person and see what she has to say. I know you want to come with me, but she's more likely to see me if I'm alone. You know how it is." Wright grunted, shifting Bombadillo so he had a better grip on him. Too well, I'm afraid. There are times when I might be more effective at being a king's inspector if I wasn't an actual inspector. He gave the bundle of ruined fur a glance. What in the world happened to this dog? He turned his nose away. "He stinks something awful." Bombadillo chose that moment to shake the rainwater from his fur. The motion sent spray every which way, but mostly at the inspector. Wright was already wet, so he didn't seem to mind. "Could have done that before we found you," he said, but he nestled the dog into the crook of his arm and gently covered him with one side of his coat to help warm him. "I never suspected you were a dog person either, Inspector," I said. "I'll contact you when I know something. It might not be tonight." "That's fine," Wright said, "but don't make me wait weeks like before. You can be sure that whoever did this will strike again, and soon, no doubt. In the meantime, I'm sure Bombadillo would appreciate a bath and something to eat." "At your earliest convenience, of course, Inspector." I lifted my mask while Wright glowered at me. Then we parted ways, with the inspector and his new charge sloshing through the puddles one way and me the other. I stopped before I exited the alley, placing a hand on the wall to steady myself. I dealt with death every day. Oftentimes I was the instigator. But those were people I hadn't known for a lifetime. I'd told the inspector that Malakai had been a friend, but our relationship went deeper than that. I'd have to find some way to let Olivia know. She and Malakai were close, closer than I ever was to the old coot, though I doubted she saw him as often as I did of late, given that he often supplied me with the information I needed to keep the wheels of my trade moving. I let out a breath. Malakai was gone, and the only way I knew how to honor his memory was to find out who had murdered him. So I returned to the rooftops at the first opportunity, running partially to warm myself, but also because the inspector was right. Murders like this happen for a reason. Maybe the victims weren't linked, but whoever or whatever had done this was after something, and they needed their victim's blood. But why? There was only one person I knew who might have an answer to that question, and her name was Mathilda. Approaching Mathilda's home was a tricky business, mostly because she wasn't expecting me. I thought about accessing her place from the roof, but the last thing I wanted to do was surprise her. Knocking on her front door wasn't exactly my style, though. So as I spotted her tenement from the adjoining building, I settled on dropping onto her balcony and getting her attention from there. I was about to jump to her building when a flash of movement through her window stopped me. Scant light lit the interior, but it was enough for me to see blades and the masked faces of the men wielding them. The place was quiet otherwise, with no sign of Mathilda. But the trespassers, I hesitated to call them assassins, though it seemed that's what they were, moved swiftly and methodically through the interior, so it couldn't be long before she noticed their presence. Given her magic, I wondered why she hadn't already. Even with her witchcraft, though, the odds were against her, and since I needed her alive, I was just getting ready to leap to her aid when I felt a presence behind me. Spinning around, a single figure ominously dressed in a midnight black robe confronted me. The person's features were concealed beneath a hood, but not for long, as delicate white hands lowered the hood to reveal a woman's face. Scarlet hair was tied in an elaborate braid, green eyes sparkled, and an amused smirk lit her face. Though the evening's soft rain persisted, not a drop of it touched the woman. "My name is Isadora," she said in a purr. "And you are?" "Someone who wants to know how you snuck up on me," I said. Behind me, a commotion sounded from Mathilda's tenement. I heard a shriek I might have thought sounded inhuman, but I knew Mathilda's voice too well. Isadora's smirk widened into a full smile. "Whatever arrangement you have with Mathilda," she said, taking one seductive step toward me, "I will double it. She is a withering speck of nothing, and I can offer you so much more. I only need a small token from you first." "Oh, what's that?" "Nothing substantial. Only a few drops of your blood." "Is that all?" "Something tells me you won't stop at a few drops." She humphed, a tiny, sharp noise she accompanied by lifting a single finger, the nail painted blood red, to my armored chest. "Name your price, then. You look useful." More commotion from the apartment, the sound of steel clashing with steel. I wondered why I saw no flashes or heard any explosions, the telltale signs of Mathilda's odd form of sorcery coming into play. "Answer a question for me," I said, inching my hand toward a knife at my belt. She ran her single finger lazily across my chest. "Ask your question." "Someone murdered a friend of mine this evening." The smile never left her lips. "It's a dangerous city, is it not?" "Someone drained all the blood from his body." "Know anything about that?" Her face lit up with recognition. "You speak of the man with the coat," she purred. "I asked nicely first if that makes you feel any better. Where can I find the witch called Mathilda?" Isadora shrugged. "He wouldn't tell me." So I took the information from him along with his life. I would say the incident was regrettable, but it really wasn't. While she talked, I slipped my fingers around the hilt of a long knife, drawing the weapon with such practiced precision, with such unrivaled speed, with entirely unmatched deadliness, that I slashed her abdomen open before she could move her finger another fraction of an inch. Or I would have if she hadn't somehow vanished in a red cloud and reappeared 10 paces away from me. She laughed as a blood-red mist rose all around her. "Until next time, mystery man," she said, the haze thickening until I lost sight of her. Turning back to Mathilda's apartment, I backed a few steps from the ledge, cursed myself for always doing stupid things, then ran and leaped across the void between buildings. I thought about aiming for the balcony, but another shriek, this one desperate, had sounded while Isadora worked her trickery. Mathilda needed help now, so I aimed for a window instead and hoped I didn't cut myself to shreds crashing through it. My armor protected me better than expected, though I felt a slash through my gambeson across one arm and a leg. Still, it was a good jump and a better landing as I tumbled straight into the midst of the ongoing battle. Mathilda was down, lying on the floor and attempting to drag herself away from 3 armed intruders dressed in Scarlet Assassin's armor. Mathilda was choking or crying while blathering about something I couldn't understand with all the intermittent wails she emitted. One assassin stood over her, a long knife raised to plunge into her back, but he thought twice about that when I flung a razor-sharp throwing star at him. While he ducked, I knocked an attack from another assassin aside, side-kicked him hard in the gut, then sidestepped the other before his dagger could slice me open. I bounded over Mathilda, crashing into the one about to end her life seconds ago. He reeled back, smashing into the wall. While he struggled to regain his balance, I made sure the other 2 stayed clear of their mark. Close combat meant knife work, so with a smile I wished they could see behind my mask, I introduced them to my long knives, slashing at them with such precision and speed it was a mystery how they dodged or parried my every attack. Mindful of the one behind me, I spun around, blocking the expected thrust before I kicked him back into the wall. All the while, Mathilda continued to drag herself away from us, a streak of blood smeared across the floor in her wake. While the first one untangled himself for the second time, I attacked the other 2 again. Once more, the intruders countered every attack of mine, moving so fast they gained the advantage and forced me back a step. Their movements, which I realized were as practiced and precise as my own, spelled even more trouble for me because they were perfectly synchronized. While one came in hard one way, feinting to draw my attention, the other attacked my other side, forcing me to remain on the defensive. But the moment I focused too heavily on one assassin, the other became a flurry of steel I had to defend against. Contrary to any belief I'd had earlier, these were highly trained assassins with skills that matched my own. Then, as if 2 weren't enough, the third assassin joined the fight. The 3 encircled me, and for the first time in a good long while, I almost felt worried. Almost, but not quite. Surrounded, it seemed a good time to laugh to throw my opponents off or let them think I knew something they didn't. But why laugh when you can kill instead? So, I selected my target and demonstrated real blade work to these pretenders. A slash aimed at the face of one elicited the expected duck, a sidestep to avoid the attack of the second, a jab at the first to keep him off balance, then a kick at the third's face as I slashed at the second to put him on the defensive. The first came in low, leaping from a crouch, so I spun around, letting him sail past me, blocking the blade he thought to stick into me in passing, then thrust my knife into his back in such a fast, clean motion, I withdrew my weapon and was well away before anyone knew what happened. The one I'd stabbed took a step, then fell to his knees. The other 2 hesitated, which was all the opening I needed. But the remaining pair had seen enough. As one, they ran for the window I'd smashed through and leaped through the opening. I went to pursue when Mathilda cried out behind me. "They have Eliza!" She rose, but had only made it to her knees. "Who the hell is Eliza?" "My daughter." "You idiot!" "Right. I'll remind Mathilda to stay out of my head later." "Right now," I asked, "where?" Mathilda pointed at the front door, which I'd noticed was open when I arrived. I dashed through, looking down the stairs descending to 6 other floors. There was no sign of anyone, so I returned to Mathilda's apartment. "Whoever took her is gone," I said, helping her to stand. She held tightly to her side, where blood leaked between her fingers. Also, her face had a nasty bruise, and more blood had matted her hair on one side of her head. "You're injured," I said, as if she didn't know. "Here, sit." She sat in the chair I offered her, but not for long. She shook her head and tried to stand, but the effort cost her as she swooned and would have collapsed if I didn't lower her back down. "Who is Isadora?" I asked. Mathilda glanced sharply at me, wincing from the sudden movement. "How do you know that name?" She looked like she meant to remain still this time, so I went to the dead assassin and peeled back his mask. He had a dusky Southlander face with dark brows and a sharp nose. I didn't recognize him. "I ran into her next door," I said, still inspecting the dead man. I got the feeling she was waiting for her men to finish their work here before she moved on. Remembering something I'd heard about Southlander assassins, I found the suspected red thorn tattoo imprinted at the base of his neck. I also saw a myriad of other tattoos, all of which looked like strange eldritch runes. This assassin belongs to a guild called the Silent Thorns. They specialize in hunting sorcerers and witches. I suppose the runes have something to do with that. I could not use my magic, Mathilda said, slowly running her hands up and down her arms. My power vanished as readily as I could summon it. Anti-magic runes? I'd seen stranger. Silent thorns are very expensive and very deadly, I said. Or so people whispered from shadowy corners. So far, I wasn't impressed with what I'd seen. Why the interest in killing you and kidnapping your daughter? Isadora seeks revenge against me for something I did to her, Mathilda said. She has been searching for me, for us, for a long time. I thought we were careful. I shielded our presence. We moved about, never staying still for long. She stood on shaky legs, retrieved a piece of linen, and alternated between holding it to her head and side while gazing about the simple room. Perhaps we stayed still for too long this time. When her gaze fell on me, it stayed there. Why are you here? You can thank me for saving your life later. An associate of mine had a run-in with your friend tonight. I came here to ask... Who? Malakai. Mathilda searched her memory. I know the name. He brokers information. Her eyes darted back and forth as she worked out the logical but incorrect sequence of events. He sold our location to Isadora. No, he didn't. Malakai's dead, drained of all his blood. I figure he died because he wouldn't give you up. Mathilda's mouth formed a silent O. I came here to ask if you knew anyone capable of doing such a thing, but it seems I already have my answer. But why kill Malakai? There were at least 2 other unrelated murders as well. They died the same way I couldn't say about the other 2, but Malakai's death seemed senseless, and even worse, pointless. Isadora is a blood witch, Mathilda said. When she drained Malakai of his blood, she learned all he knew. And the others? A bloodletting also gives her strength. Their deaths may have served no other purpose. Is that why she wants your daughter? I asked. To take her strength? Mathilda winced in pain as she adjusted the linen pressed against her side. Both wounds had stopped bleeding at least. You all right? Yes. Isadora will steal my daughter's strength, but also her power. As my blood, she is gifted. Unlike the others she killed, she must perform a ritual to ensure nothing is wasted. We must find her. Any idea where to look? No, but she will take Eliza somewhere secluded, where no one will disturb her. Also, a place where death is strong. A cemetery, perhaps. What about your magic? Can you use it to locate her? She shook her head. Isadora shields her presence from such forms of scrying. And the Silent Thorns? Them too? They have a different sort of protection. Now, enough of your questions. We need to determine where Isadora has taken my daughter. She paced the room with a hobbling gait as her wounds continued to inhibit her. She pointed at the corpse. This man may know something, but Malakai might as well. I am weak, so cannot ask them both. Malakai may have known where to find her, but maybe you missed the part about having all the blood drained from his body. He's dead. So's this assassin. You know what they say about dead men telling no tales. Pfft, she said. The dead tell many tales, especially when properly motivated. Where is Malakai's corpse? When I hesitated to answer, she shot me a look that demanded I speak. The man's dead, I said, not enthusiastic about the witch disturbing my friend's spirit. He's beyond answering your questions. Humph, she said. We shall see about that. Now where? Something or someone he was attached to might allow me to summon his spirit as well. Malakai didn't own anything other than the clothes on his back. However. Yes? Mathilda asked impatiently. Malakai had a dog. Assuming you aren't going to hurt him, I can take you to him. Would that work? Possibly. No harm will come to it, I promise. Take me to it. Easier said than done. I had no idea where the inspector may have gone, or if he'd even kept Bombadillo in his care. But we had a deal, and I felt the inspector wouldn't have passed off such responsibility to anyone else, so I put that from my mind and considered Wright's current location. There were only so many options, and most of them involved work or home. But considering what I knew about him and the nature of Malakai's murder, I didn't think the inspector would sleep while the crime remained unsolved. Inspector Wright was intelligent and resourceful, so he may have already learned about the Blood Witch, or at least conjectured that one was involved. So, if I was a king's inspector and knew a homicidal Blood Witch was loose in my city, where would I go to apprehend her? Or, more to the point, if I were a Blood Witch and I wanted to murder a child, where would I do it? Once the act was done, she'd need to leave the city quickly, because once the murder came to light, every cobble stomper and inspector, hell, even Alchester's regular citizens, would swarm the city looking for her. There seemed only one logical answer. I think I know where to find your daughter. Where? Mathilda asked, staring at me with a quizzical look and an ever-increasing lack of patience. I'll explain on the way. Trust me. With time running out for her daughter, Mathilda had little choice but to follow me through the rain-slick streets of the Shambles toward the city's outer edge. I may not be a blood witch, but I know murder better than anyone. You want to make a spectacle out of it? Hit the mark at a party, or the theater. You want to keep it quiet? Wait until they're alone at work or home, or lure them into an ambush in a dark alley. Or if you want to perform a bloody, ritualistic murder, which I've never done, though I think I have a good enough handle on the requirements, you go to the bloodiest place in the city, where killing is the order of the day, and the stench of death hangs heavy in the air. We slipped through a hidden crevice in the city's outermost wall, and there it was. The King's Stockyards, I said. It was the perfect place for a deranged lunatic to commit murder. The hour was late, so the place was empty. It's far enough from the city that if there's a ruckus, no one will know about it until morning. And, last, the yard already runs red with blood, so what's a little more? Mathilda listened to my reasoning, then she nodded her agreement. As we neared the place, I said, we should split up. We crouched in the dark. Ahead, the abattoir was quiet, but for the mewling of those unlucky candidates waiting to become tomorrow's supper. Find your daughter. I'll take care of the Silent Thorns. I guess whoever finds the witch first gets to deal with her. Be wary, Mathilda said. There was one other assassin. The one who took my daughter, the way he acted. He is their leader. Isadora will keep the assassins at a distance lest their anti-magic runes prevent her from completing her bloodletting ritual. Mathilda agreed to give me a 10-minute head start to deal with any assassins lurking in the shadows before sneaking inside to locate Eliza. I suppose she needed only to follow the sound of ritualistic chanting. In any case, Mathilda had her task, and I had mine, so I slipped away, keeping my weapons sheathed, so no stray light reflected from the blades. The fight inside Mathilda's apartment had called for knife work, and I didn't think the immediate situation here was much different. But if the situation called for it, I had my Steel Island sword over a shoulder and myriad other blades and throwing stars at my disposal. Except for the sword, these weapons were likely matched by the same or similar ones carried by the Silent Thorns, not to mention any Southlander tricks the assassins had up their sleeves. My personal take on their abilities aside, they were still highly trained assassins who knew the tricks of the trade as well as I did. If not for their greater numbers, I'd say the advantage was mine, but greater numbers meant nothing if I took them out one at a time. Not knowing the abattoir's exact layout, I padded through the exterior garden with caution. Roses and magnolias were meant to put a nice face on the otherwise grisly business taking place inside. But while the decorative flowers, trees, and tall grasses fooled no one, they provided cover as I pried open a window and slipped into what was probably an administrative office. Crouching in the dark, I stopped to listen for movement or other signs of someone lurking nearby. When I sensed nothing, I slunk through an open door, down a hall, and out to a dirt lane heavily marked by hoofprints. A metal stair led up to an elevated walkway that wrapped around the nearest corner. The high ground was always better, so I blended with the darkness, padding up each step until I reached the top. Much of the interior of the slaughterhouse remained cloaked in shadow, but traces of moonlight coming and going with breaks in the passing rain clouds illuminated the dirt lane below. It ended at a circular hub where a partitioned wheel funneled the arriving animals into specific bays. I saw no movement there. Not wanting to remain still for long, I kept moving, scanning in all directions and reaching out with all my senses. Still, I detected no trace of the Silent Thorns. They were invisible and quiet, but I was trained to use all my senses when hunting a mark. So while the pungent aroma of unwashed animals and feces permeated my olfactory senses, I detected the slightest hint of something else. Something far too pleasant to easily blend with the aroma of a slaughterhouse. But it was impossible to tell from where the scent had originated, and then it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. Undeterred and knowing I was close, I waited, despite knowing that the clock was ticking and that Mathilda was coming soon. The stockyards were well ventilated on purpose, so a breeze wafting across the place carried the fragrance to me again. Like a fine wine, the perfumed scent was distinctively feminine, musky with a hint of lilac, and since all my opponents were men, I figured it had to come from an indulgence in female companionship. I didn't fault them for satisfying their base desires, but I did for their sloppiness. But their mistakes were my advantage, so who was I to criticize? Now that I recognized it, the scent was easy to detect and even easier to locate its source. Hidden in a permanently darkened recess of the walkway, the Silent Thorn's attention was on the dirt lane below and nothing else. The advantage of having numbers is covering multiple angles at once, but the disadvantage is that each sentry was alone. So as I padded up behind this one, slowly drawing my killing knife, he had no one to warn him as my left hand covered his mouth and the other slashed his neck wide. While his life's blood spilled out, I gently lowered him to the floor. Then I was on the move again, descending from the walkway to prowl the slaughter chutes where animals were herded to die. It seemed a fitting place to find my next victim, or I should say for him to find me, since he came at me with knives flashing. His mistake was giving me a fraction of a second to react. Time I used to dodge his first slash, then his other, and then he was the one dodging, and not very well as I slashed a forearm, a leg, and across his chest. He reeled back, stunned by my onslaught, but not defeated. He spun a knife around, caught it by the handle, then let it fly at me. It was an expert throw, but only a distraction to buy him time to draw a short blade to match his remaining knife before he pressed his attack again. I drew my other long knife, so at least we were equally matched in the number of blades. Then it was cut. Dodge, slash, sidestep, and thrust, the last attack of which almost pierced my shoulder before my armor turned the blade. That left him overextended, and he knew it. But though he tried to pull to one side, I slashed his arm and almost had his neck with my other knife. He hissed in pain but ducked low, slashing into my thigh as he did so. The cut was shallow, the sharp flash of pain discomforting at best, so I had no problem slamming a knife hilt into his face, spinning around, and kicking him in the gut. He folded over, stumbling back and crashing into a metal gate with a resounding clang. If that didn't draw the others, I didn't know what would, so I came in hard, knocked his short sword away, kicked him again, and plunged my knives into him while his back was to the gate. He slid to the floor, still dying as I slipped away, returning to the shadows. I didn't wait long, though, because if Mathilda had stuck to our plan, she was already inside the stockyards and might already have found her daughter or Isadora. I quickly checked my wound. It had bled, but not much, and then I was moving again, slinking low along the sow pens. The oinkers inside rustled about, grunting and emitting soft squeals of agitation at the smell of my blood. Figuring they made a good distraction, I sequestered myself in the shadows to see if anyone arrived to investigate. Someone did. The assassin crept in slowly, carefully, watching for movement and listening as I would. Nothing distinguished him from the others. He wore the same blood-red armor and moved identically to the ones I'd killed, but I wondered if this was their leader. With only 2 left, I had more than a fair chance of running into him. Turns out, my instincts proved correct. When did they not? "I know you're in here," the assassin said, his silky voice slightly muffled by his mask. "I lead these men. Come out, so we can finish this. I promise I will kill you quickly. I'm not much for accepting challenges, but it's not every day I run into another assassin." I stepped into the faint light, long knives held ready. The room was open to the sky, so rain pattered around us, but the pen's sandy dirt quickly absorbed it. "Ah, there you are," the assassin said. "Since you've made it this far, shall I assume you've killed 2 of my men?" "You may," I said. "My name is Zarek of the Silent Thorns. Who, may I ask, are you? I ask because it is good to know the name of a vanquished enemy. No?" "My name isn't important." Zarek hadn't drawn a weapon, though I saw knives, daggers, and a sword at his belt. If he was like me, he also had other concealed weapons. Zarek shrugged. "Then I shall remember you as the assassin without a name." That fit more than he knew. "You will not find me such easy prey," Zarek said, hands drifting to his belt. I wondered if this was going to be a knife fight, or if we'd cross swords instead. Zarek chose knives, drawing twin long knives like mine, so we were matched evenly. The pen was large enough for us to move in a circle. We made one rotation, each of us watching the other and waiting for movement. And then we were at each other, knives clashing in a flash of moonlit steel. We parted just as quickly. Like me, he tested my skill, probed for weaknesses, and gauged my mettle. I know he found no area of mine wanting, but I could say the same for him. His footwork was exceptional, and he never lost track of my movement, though I'd tried to throw him off. Zarek was more than a middling journeyman of his cadre. I wondered if perhaps he might be a master. Master or not, he still needed to die, so I moved in again, faster this time, giving him such a taste of my speed it had to leave a bitter taste in his mouth. But he deflected or dodged my every attack, mostly remaining on the defensive as we danced around the pen in a blur of movement. Finally, he turned my blade, then shot forward with his other knife, scoring a slash across my arm. He pressed his advantage, kicking low, slashing high, then whirling around to ram his hilt into my gut. I knew the move, so I doubled over and shifted my weight to avoid his next thrust. Good thing, too, because he meant to finish this quickly, aiming for vital organs, or at least trying to effect a debilitating attack. I was already halfway to the ground, so I fell forward, tumbling away, but almost immediately coming up against the pen's wall. The space, which had seemed adequate moments ago, now seemed too small. I spun around and Zarek was already striking and slashing with such speed it was all I could do to hold him at bay. No words were exchanged or expected. This was kill or be killed, with no quarter expected from either side. I could see in the gleam of Zarek's eyes as he thrust at me again that he relished the contest. But he couldn't see that I was enjoying it more. It had been too long since I'd had such a challenge, or faced such a worthy opponent. I let such fervor guide me, ducking beneath his next thrust and springing forward to reach out with my long knife to score a bloody gash across his midsection. Blood for blood made us even, but it didn't count for much in the end, since the only way to win this fight was to draw more blood than the other. Zarek put a hand to his side where I'd wounded him. "You are skilled," he said. "Who was your master?" I considered lying or making something up, but figured it didn't hurt to throw around the truth occasionally. Some knew him as Reuben Kariaktos. Like me, he assumed many aliases to the point where I wasn't sure which had been his real one, though he'd used that one often enough. Zarek slowly nodded. "I know the name. If I remember correctly, he hails from Agrapor, a city near my home. He is dead?" "Yes," I said. "He made alliances with the wrong side, so—" I shrugged. There wasn't much more to say than that. He crossed me and paid the price, but no reason to surrender intimate details to someone I just met. Zarek seemed to understand anyway. "The apprentice kills the master, eh?" Zarek said. "Such is the way of things in our profession sometimes. We find ourselves at similar odds, but only because of the temporary alliances we have each chosen, There is no right or wrong to it, not for men such as you and I. Normally, I'd agree. As an assassin, I didn't choose sides. I acted in my own self-interests. Opposing the Jackery and the warders wasn't me taking a stand against bad people. It was simple self-preservation. By protecting my city, I protected my business interests. But this conflict between Mathilda and Isadora was something different. What was the difference? Mathilda's daughter, Eliza. But your employer dragged a child into her fight with Mathilda. Like Kyriactos, you chose the wrong side. Also, like him, you're about to die. Unless you'd like to walk away? Zarek humphed. Not likely. Silent Thorns do not abandon a contract until it is fulfilled. I figured as much, but thought I'd at least make the offer. Then there's not much more to discuss, I said, sheathing my knives and drawing my Steel Island sword. Isadora was somewhere close, ready to work her diablerie on Eliza, and I was running out of time. That meant playtime was over. Zarek mimicked my move, drawing his sword, which was a sleek, curved sliver of steel, light in his hands and even more deadly than his knives. No more words were exchanged as we leaped at each other, blades clashing and whirling in a dance of equals. With our longer reach, the pen was even more confined than before, and with me pressing the advantage this time, Zarek felt compelled to kick at the pen door and tumble through just as I was about to take his head off. He spun around, fighting me every step of the way as he backed down the killing chute into a wide space used to collect the carcasses of animals. Sawdust mixed with dried blood and the remains of guts carpeted the ground, providing loose footing that we both used to our advantage. We were as evenly matched with swords as we were with knives, though, and so we pressed each other back and forth, blades slicing empty air again and again before Zarek finally made a mistake, slipping on a patch of loose sawdust when he otherwise would have cut me in half. But his perceived mistake was a ruse, meant to lure me closer as he slashed his blade in a backhanded motion. A lesser opponent might have fallen for it. I did not. But I let him think he had me, lunging in to take advantage of his blunder at the appropriate and expected moment. His sword, already raised, struck fast, slicing the air where I'd been a fraction of a second ago. My sword wasn't in the best position to counter, but I did what I could, slashing with enough conviction to distract him from the unseen knife I thrust between his ribs. Not finished, I withdrew it, letting him stumble a step before I brought my sword down across his body, my Steel Island's blade slicing through his armor and into the flesh and bone beneath. He was hurt badly, so I waited to see what he did next. With some effort, he straightened. His eyes, wide with shock, lost their luster, and as the life left him, he stumbled, fell to a knee, then toppled over. "You're right, Zarek," I said, unsure if he could even hear me. "It is good to know the name of a vanquished enemy. I'll remember yours, at least for a little while. I might even toast you later this evening, but right now I had one more assassin and a witch to kill, so I ran down the lane, knowing I'd already wasted too much time with the 3 dead assassins. I hated throwing caution to the wind like that, but Isadora may have started, or even completed, her ritual, so there was no more time to lose. Only one area in the slaughterhouse was fit for a blood ritual, and that was right here in the slaughter pens. But the stockyards were vast, with different sections for each type of animal. The sign over the pens here read, "Swine." I ran to the next one over, which was designated for sheep and calves, and still the next, which was for oxen, and I still saw no sign of Isadora or Eliza. Maybe the Blood Witch had already completed her ritual and cleared out. But there was still one more slaughterhouse to check, and as I padded closer to it, I finally heard Isadora's distinctive purring voice. But her words weren't so much a purr as a howl, her words coming fast and furious and begging for her life. The time for subterfuge had passed, so I stepped into the killing room where I saw Isadora on her knees, her fists clenched, and her face a wild mask of wide eyes while her open mouth babbled something I couldn't make out. Standing over her was Mathilda, or someone who looked very much like the witch but shorter. This wasn't Mathilda at all, but Eliza, whom I'd only seen previously from a distance and not for long that one time. There was no mistaking that she was Mathilda's daughter, with the same plum-colored hair, pale skin, darkened fingernails, and delicate features. Also, she had the same crazed look in her eyes, but with a petulant ferocity I had yet to see in her mother. I took one step into the room, and not of my own volition, froze. Like the first time I'd encountered Mathilda, I suddenly couldn't move a muscle. "Who are you?" Eliza asked in a high-pitched voice, her dark eyes turning to me. Before her, Isadora continued to blubber incoherently. "An associate of your mother's," I said. "A friend." Her gaze drifted as she considered my answer. "A friend?" "Something like that," I said. "Not an enemy." She sniffed. Her hands, held to her sides, dripped blood. While some of the paleness in her face was undoubtedly natural, it was more than that. I saw more blood at her feet, smeared in a circle around her. A line of it went directly to Isadora. "Your mother sent me to find you," I said, hoping that provided her enough clarity to release me. "You look like the one who took me," Eliza said. "That may be so, but I'm not with them." She stumbled a step but caught herself and did not fall. I saw Isadora react, not overtly, but enough that her babbling skipped a beat, and she seemed poised to make a move against the girl. She may be down, but she wasn't out. Eliza shook her head. "I don't believe you." I felt a tightening in my throat. "You're here to hurt me," she said. "I'm not here to hurt you," I said, gasping the words out. "I think that you should release him, Eliza." In stumbled Mathilda, one hand pressed to her side where she'd been wounded and the other holding loosely to an assassin's blade. She let the dagger fall from her hand with a soft thump onto the hoof-marked, sawdust-covered floor. "He is a friend," Mathilda said. "Now release him." "Yes, release me." My throat was so constricted that forming words was no longer possible. In another second, taking a breath would be impossible too. Eliza's gaze went to her mother. Behind her, Isadora remained on her knees, but her eyes darted from mother to daughter, and she edged backward. "But mother, you said we have no friends. Didn't you tell me that?" "I did, but I was wrong." She looked at me and sniffed. "We have one." The girl's dazed expression settled on me, and just like that, I was free. I sprang for Isadora, who rose at the same time to flee with reckless abandon from the room. "Stop!" Mathilda said, her breathing labored. "Let her go." I stopped. "What? Why?" But Mathilda didn't answer. Instead, she stumbled to her daughter, who looked about to collapse, and took hold of her. The girl crumpled into her embrace. They stayed like that, the mother clasping her daughter tight, and I saw the younger trembling and heard her quietly sobbing. I hated to interrupt, but the blood witch was getting away. "Mathilda, why shouldn't I track Isadora down and kill her?" Mathilda sighed. "Because she is my sister." With Eliza in the crook of her arm, Mathilda stumbled from the ritualistic circle. She stopped with her daughter before me, but it was only to utter a quick thank you, and then they left the slaughterhouse. I gave them the count of 5 before I set off after Isadora. The blood witch may be Mathilda's sister, but she was no family of mine, and I owed her for what she'd done to Malakai. But there was no sign of her. With few other choices, I returned to the city to find Inspector Wright and a healer to stitch me up. I knew I hadn't seen the last of Isadora, and that she'd think twice about coming after Eliza again after what happened here tonight. As for me, I wondered if I'd made myself a target by getting involved. I probably had. But what day went by when someone in Alchester didn't want me dead? Isadora was welcome to get in line. At least the next time we met, I'd know what to expect when she asked for a few drops of my blood. You've reached the end of this adventure. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel to get a notification when each new story is available. You can view all my books and get the latest news by visiting scottmarlowe.com.